Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, I have a special one where I have the best deer hunters in the country debating some complex topics. I'm joined by Levi Morgan, Andy May, Johnny Stewart, Taylor Chamberlin, Garrett Prahl, Lee Ellis, and Drew Carroll to have a roundtable discussion about different topics that don't really have straightforward answers. We discuss executing shots in the moment of truth, public versus private land, fixed versus mechanical broadheads, favorite time of year to kill a mature buck, what it takes to be consistently successful, personal hunting goals, and much more. On this week's Mountain Buck Monday, story of the week comes out of Tennessee from Brandon Jenkins. So Brandon wrote in, I set a goal early in the year to get in shape and get after a good mountain buck. I hunted hard all season, laid in there without much luck. With the last weekend of the season, it was raining and super foggy as me and my best friend checked the first camera. There were some good bucks on there, so we reset the camera and headed to the next spot. We were going down this ridge that was super rocky. When we finally got to the logging road we wanted to be on, we'd been talking the whole way down the ridge. We weren't really trying to be quiet or anything when we got to the logging road. I asked if it was his birthday, and it just so happened to be where I said, "Happy birthday, buddy." We took about 10 steps, and there was this buck over the hill scratching his back with his horns. We both got down on one knee. I pulled my gun up and got the crosshair on the deer, and I couldn't really see the body clearly because of the fog and rain. The buck used his back legs to scratch his belly, and the movement from that let me see enough to get a shot off. At this time, I really didn't know how big the deer was. I knew he was a good-sized deer after I shot, and then the deer ran off. Then we saw him run into a big thicket, found blood, and started tracking with bad weather coming in, and it's still raining. We pushed on with tracking him. We ended up jumping him up, and he ran down the ridge into another thicket, but this time I could see him laying on the other side of it and was able to get a second shot off on this deer. It was the last day of the season, and I couldn't believe what we had just done. So if you want to check out this buck, which is one of the biggest bucks I've seen come out of the Tennessee mountains, at least coming into this Mountain Buck Monday. Just giant deer. You head over to East Meets West Hunt Instagram or East Meets West Outdoors on Facebook. You can check that out. Feel free to send over your Mountain Buck Monday submission. Love to hear it, big or small, any public, private land, but I want it to be a big woods mountain buck. Send that in. You can go over to my website, eastmeetswesthunt.com, fill out the contact us form, and send in your story. Just a short paragraph with a couple of photos would be great. All right, so some news this week. This podcast here that's coming out, it was from the Spartan Forge retreat. So the retreat was, when was it? I guess it was a week or so ago. 2 weeks, I guess now. 2 weeks ago. It was so much fun. The people that are involved with the Spartan Forge team are just incredible. The pro staff team is just a bunch of freaking killers, and Bill and his team at Spartan Forge are doing everything they can to continually improve this app. I'm really excited for everyone to see the next update, which really could be out any day here. We've been working out some bugs on it. I've been testing it for I think months now. There's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of changes coming to it. So I'll cover that a little more when those come out. But we're going to be doing a lot of videos on the Spartan Forge page, mostly on their YouTube channel and stuff, of how to use different features. That's some of the feedback we've gotten, is just not understanding how to use some of it. So I want to try to help and make that more clear. But I think it's going to be a really useful tool. Some of the people at the Spartan, or at the Mountain Buck Scouting Camp, got to see some of the features, the new features live. and including the web map, which is awesome. And not sure how much I'm able to talk about all that, but I just gave you a little bit on it. So anyways, that's coming out. And this podcast is going to also be a video podcast. It's going to take a couple days to get it up on my YouTube channel. We're having some difficulties in the editing process on the video version, so be patient. But if you subscribe to my YouTube, which is just my name, Beau Martonik, hit that little bell to notify you when a new video comes out, and you'll see it. The next 3 episodes are all going to be video podcasts, actually, and I might do some more of it. And what I really want to know is, give me your feedback. Do you care to watch video podcasts on YouTube? Do you think it's a waste of time? Takes a lot more time on my end, but I know a lot of people enjoy that. So just trying to try something different. So if you like it, let me know. If you don't, let me know as well. So as always, I appreciate it. If you could head over to wherever you listen to the podcast, give a rating and review. Man, that helps out so much. And just really appreciate it, guys. I hope that you have a great rest of your week.
All right, we're live. I guess I guess this is part of the East Meets West Hunt podcast / Spartan Forge, and so sitting here in a round table kind of discussion. It's going to be a different type of podcast where we're going to have up to 8, 9 people that might filter through here, but 4 at a time. Gonna cut out all the fluff at the beginning. I really don't care about Taylor Chamberlain's background. Or Levi Morgan or Annie Mae, but they're all here sitting with me. What's going on, guys?
What's up?
Just shooting some bows at the Spartan Forge event, and we tried sending Levi down the road, but he stuck around.
I'm very disappointed in my performance.
Yeah,
personally, I was at the first person out. After when we were starting, I'm like, oh yeah, you don't want to be the first person out, and then lo and behold, a little 37-yard chip shot, and guess what? See ya. So
yeah,
that was
close,
fun.
though.
Yeah, real close to missing the target. Those darn pins. I'm not used to moving them around.
Did you use the wrong pin?
Yeah. But excuses are the nails that build the houses of losers, right?
I always said it for you, so it's not actually.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very good observation. You're
Thanks.
just that dialed in.
I knew you were.
And I put my my Sunday makeup on for you today on one eye.
Yeah, what happened?
I have a black eye.
I'm pretty sure that your wife punched you in the face, but that's not the story we're getting.
I wish my wife would hit this hard. Actually, my wife's boyfriend doesn't hit very hard, clearly. My daughter, me being the genius that I am, does not understand the difference between toss me my phone, meaning toss me gently, or throw a Nolan Ryan fastball in my face. So I got my phone back.
And that's what hit you in the corner of the eye.
In the corner of the eye. I thought she blew my eyeball up. It was awful.
Andy, you think the story's legit?
I don't know. It's a little far-fetched.
I swear to God.
It's Taylor. I mean, got to be something.
Yeah.
Something better than that.
Does that affect your country club membership and stuff?
Yeah, we're not allowed at the club.
I didn't think so.
With a black eye. That's frowned upon.
That's
they make
not
you
a good
eat in the
look.
back.
Yeah. Not a good look.
That's funny. So the competition that we had there, it was funny. We were joking up front about it. We're like, when Levi comes here, he's got nothing to win and everything to lose, because he's like the big guy at the bar that people want to fight just to prove a point because he's a big guy. And Levi, with being the million-time world champion shooter, I mean, everybody's trying to take him out, specifically Ellis, who was watching tapes and trying to find your weaknesses.
Yeah, those are my least favorite type of shoots, because I feel like if I win, it's cool, but if I don't, it's that's going on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. No, it's fine. I just did one the other day against a girl and got totally throttled. So I think it already had over 1 million views.
Did it really?
Yeah. They called it the legend shoot, and I knew before I agreed to do it, it was a bad idea, but I did it anyway.
Yeah.
She's like the #1 female archer that ever lived.
Well, yeah,
she's really good.
Yeah.
When you're in a shoot like that, when do you get most nervous? When do your nerves hit the highest point?
Depends on the shoot, and it depends on like say we're at a 3D event and the final arrow, I have to 14 it to win. Obviously that's a way more stressful situation than you got to hit an 8 to win, you know? So like in that situation, it'd be the final arrow, but like Vegas, something like that, it's normally my first in for score because like it's a 3-day event and you can't miss once. Like if you miss your first arrow, you might as well go home. Yeah. If you miss your last arrow, go home. So it's like that weather in that first, because you've been not nervous. Practice. They blow the whistle. Game time. All the nerves hit. And it's like weather in that first 3 arrows is the hardest. So it's just different every event.
How do you deal with that? Like what's your process, or what goes through your head in those types of situations, those high stress situations?
Ideally, just my shot process. But that's easier said than done, you know. And I do it well sometimes and I don't do it well other times. But you really don't want to focus on what's at stake. That's when you really start messing up. Like, okay, if I miss here, I get to go home, or there's $120,000 on the line and I only have one more arrow and I win, you know. And that's when you start thinking those thoughts, you go home.
Yeah.
So you really have to be so like into what you're doing. Okay, I'm drawing back, I'm doing this, I'm put the pin in the middle, forget about it, execute. Just everything has to have steps, because the minute you leave space, your mind goes to what's at stake or what could go wrong. And when you think about something happening at full draw, it normally does. Like, don't go low.
Yeah, it's the same as like if you got a giant buck walking in and somebody's like, oh my God, that thing's going to look great on my wall. Like, you're going to miss that.
Oh, yeah.
Or if you thought of like, don't miss, you know, like, but if you focus on the process,
right,
and like just kind of check those little steps off, next thing you know, it's like a center punch. Perfect.
It kind of takes you out of that moment.
Yep.
You know, if you can give yourself a process, a step-by-step process to focus on, it takes the weight of the situation off. Like out here, you know, it's like, this is my chance to beat Levi Morgan. That's the wrong thing to be thinking about. Mm-hmm. You know, you should be thinking about letting that pin float in the middle and just executing your shot. Right. But it's easier said than done, and it usually falls apart on those highest pressure moments, you know, whether it's that big buck or, you know, standing on the line of Vegas with that one arrow left or whatever, you know.
I think
hard to do.
I think I won more tournaments like in 2010 through 2014. Just like, it seemed like I didn't do anything special. I just stayed the same. And like, these guys would shoot way ahead and maintain a lead, and I was just like there, you know, hanging around there. And we get in the finals and they all just poof. And I'm just still doing the just staying consistent, you know. And I felt like I never, like, I'm like, I didn't even feel like I deserved to win, you know, but I was just there and like consistent, and those guys are just boom, boom. So like, you got to stay, like, your emotions, your thoughts, everything need to be here. And a lot of times I would shoot and win, and then afterwards just like fall apart, because I'm like, holy crap, if I would have made one mistake here. And then you start thinking like, but if you start thinking those things during the event, that's when it's like, it's over.
Yeah.
What's what when you draw back, maybe give an example, like a high pressure tournament situation, or, you know, a big buck. What is your process? What are you working through in your mind? Are you saying a mantra to yourself? Are you thinking about relaxing and letting it float? Or are you thinking about pull? Like, how do you work through that?
Yeah. Hunting, I said earlier, if I could take that same confidence that I have when I'm hunting to like competition, I would be way better off. So like hunting, I'm thinking about so many things other than like this buck getting away or making a bad shot. So like, to me, my best friend hunting is my rangefinder, because I'm constantly ranging, because it keeps my mind occupied. So like, if he's walking, I'm hitting him every 2 steps. Like, I'm here. And then like, if there's a gap, I'm like, boom, I'm going to hit that tree, rangefinder's up. And so like, I don't give myself time to sit and go, that's a 180-inch deer. And like, if I just make a good shot, like, oh my gosh, you know. So and then I pull back and I'm like thinking all the things. Is he on high alert? Do I pin him low? Like, stay away from the shoulder? So I have all these things that I'm thinking about other than don't screw this up, you know. And so before I know it, it almost just like happens. Boom. It feels like like it might be 5 minutes. It feels like 10 seconds to me hunting. Mm-hmm. Like, it just happens and I'm like, cool. In a tournament, it doesn't always work that way, you know. I have so much more time to sit and analyze the situation. But
yeah. What about you, Andy? What's your process when you have a big buck in front of you or whatever animal it might be?
Yeah, well, you and I have talked about it before. I had 2010 through 2012. I had target panic as bad as anyone can get it. Really, really bad. And it was a handful of people. I kind of like started searching for the answer, the correct way to execute a shot. And honestly, some of your stuff really helped me. Some stuff from guys online, just giving me a different way to think about the shot process. Because I was always the guy that pulled back as soon as that pin crossed the target, hammer the trigger. Well, basically what I tried to do is I tried to learn that like unanticipated shot. And it took a lot of work for me, a lot of blind bailing, a lot of drills that I picked up from more experienced shooters. But now it's never really crept its way back in, and I've been able to keep my shots under control for the most part. But basically what I do is when I draw back and I come to anchor and I touch my nose to the string and I splash my pin like right on the target. I don't try to bring it up, down. It's just like, boom, it's right there. Because what I used to do is I used to freeze below a little bit, and then I'd be like almost stuck there, and I'd want to jerk it up and hit it. So I call it splashing, but I splash it right on the spot, and I just stare at that spot. And I'll often say to myself, settle. And that just allows me to just relax. It's like a cue to me to relax my bow hand, relax my shoulders, just relax. And then when I'm ready, when that deer moves his leg forward, or I'm ready to execute the shot, I'll just say aim, aim, aim. And I can do it two ways. I can say pull, 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 or aim, aim, aim. But what that is a cue for me to start building pressure. And I just aim, aim, aim. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just kind of pulling into the back wall and kind of like a back tension style execution. But it just helps me achieve that unanticipated release where I'm not anticipating the shot and moving my arm. So I just aim, 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 pull, 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 and it goes off. And it's like kind of a surprise shot, and it finds its way into the middle. And it's like I'm not trying to steer the pin. I'm not trying to hold it. I just kind of let it move, and it does. It moves around, but I just stare at the spot I want to hit, and it just keeps in that area, And as long as I execute my shot smooth, it seems to go there. But in a hunting situation where I need to get it to go a little quicker, I've been doing this for so long now, I can be a little more aggressive in my pull and make it go a little quicker when I need to. So yeah, it took a while. Honestly, it was a relearning of how to shoot. And thanks to a lot of people putting stuff out there and a handful of people that helped me, I was able to get past that, because I was in a bad spot, man. Yeah. Wounded deer, missing deer, and it was just like, gosh, I loved bow hunting so much, but it was really hard to get past that.
I think a lot of people get hung up not knowing like that pin float's okay, and then also like what's an acceptable amount of pin float, right? And then the answers to those, the reason that that's hard to describe is like it's different for everyone, right? Like what your sight picture looks like, yours, mine, Beau's, they're all different because of how you're holding the bow, your strength, your physical ability, everything, and then also like your confidence level. But I did the same thing where like I had to work through a process in my shooting. And I say it every time I release an arrow. I pick a spot, so I'm aiming. I try to like visualize where the heart is on that animal, and I kind of like see it in 3D. And I want to just put an arrow right through the top of that heart. So I just pick a spot and I say paint it. So like you're saying, splashing, same thing. I think of like those old laser guided missiles back in like the Gulf War era, where like a guy had to paint the laser pointer on it. So like I just stupidly think of my pin as that laser. And so in my mind, I'm like painting the spot, and it just is there. And then I just say, keep it painted while you pull, 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 pull. And it just...
Yeah. And I mean, you're shooting 100 deer a year, maybe more. I don't know.
Certainly no shortage of food supply in the Chamberlin household.
I think, we talk about pin float, and I heard Levi saying, on that one shot, like, what was your pin doing on that high roller target out there with a little white spot? And he said, well, my pin wasn't leaving the white, and it happened to when the shot broke, but he was able to just let it float, and it was staying in that little white circle. And mine wasn't quite so tight. I was staring at that circle, and I would say maybe 60% of the time it's in there, but it's coming out, but it's going right back in. And you just execute the shot. But I feel like if you get excessive pin movement, that can create that anxiety of like, oh, I got to start steering it, or I got to try to hold it tight, or I got to time that release. So that's where, kind of balancing your bow, getting some stabilization in there to kind of slow that down and steady that. Adding weight to your bow in certain spots can really calm that pin float down, decrease that anxiety. So then you're able to just stay in that shot and execute.
Yeah, and by staring at that target, you're not forcing the pin to go back there. It's just naturally,
does it on its own. Yeah, it's really cool.
And I think having zero pin movement a lot of times is way worse, because like I'm so used to that. Like I've shot so long, and like my bow, I'll weight it and balance it and spend so much time getting it to sit there. And like on that target, what gets me in trouble most of the time in tournaments is that movement, that first movement firing the shot, like I was talking about out there. Like all these other ones, like everything was fine, sits in the middle, boom. But I'm pulling so slowly on that hinge, and it's like always on the edge of firing. And like the tiniest pressure fires it. And so when I'm aiming and that first move, my first movement actually fires a shot. And so like if it's a constant movement, you don't get that, And so like, I don't know if you guys know who Joel Turner is. You know Joel.
Yeah.
Joel teaches that like his son, Bodie, who just won Vegas at 14.
Yeah.
The biggest shoot in the world, had the lightest, like 10 ounces on his bow. And he wants fast, quick movement. So your mind can't process, oh, I'm out of the dot. Oh, I'm over here, or it won't sit in the middle. And then that first dip or movement fires the shot and you miss by this far. So if you have that quick movement, you're staring at the middle, but it's always coming back, and like, it's amazing what you can hit. And he also talks about like target panic is like, he asked me, he said, Levi, how much concentration and how much determination would it take for you to slowly walk through a house that's on fire? And I was like, a lot, and he's like, that's what it is. Like each shot, you have to slowly walk through this house that's on fire, step by step, room by room. Once you shut a door, you don't go back to it. And so like when he told me that, I started thinking about it, like it makes a lot of sense where you have these steps and you treat it like a house. When you pull back, you're opening the front door, you close it. I always say anchor it shut, and then you go to the aiming room. That's the first room you come in. Put the pin in the middle. Once it goes to the middle, you leave that room. And then it's just like this next step. So you never get stuck in one spot. So like if you stay in the aiming room and all of a sudden your aiming's not great, then you never make it to the execution, and then you freeze. And then at some point you have to just like fire it. And I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble. They get stuck in this house or they try to run through it. It's kind of my wife looked at me like, what, but if you really think about it, it's makes a lot of sense to me, at least when I'm like my mind in that shot. Cause a lot of times it's like high pressure situations. It's like this house is on fire. Like you want to rush through all your steps and get to the final end. And that's what gets you in trouble. But
that's interesting about the quicker pin float, because he's probably not perceiving when he's out.
So he can execute so much better. Yeah,
because out there, even on that last shot, like I mean, this shoot meant nothing.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just for fun, but it's still
nothing on the
you don't
line.
want to lose.
It's still pressure.
You know what I mean? The first guy out.
Yeah, and I was holding, and my pin movement, was more, and I stayed in it, but like I could tell, like it was like it was out. I was like, oh gosh, settle, just let it relax, but. That's something to think about. I always thought that heavier bow, that slower, gradual pin float was better. But
it is if you can fire it in the middle. The problem is your mind can see like, oh, it's out, so you stop pulling. And when you start that freeze and go deal is when you get in a lot of trouble. But like that quick, your mind can't be like, it's out, it's out, it's in, it's out. It's just like, okay, just keep pulling. Boom, right in the middle, boom, and like it's just crazy what you think is better isn't always better. Yeah. And Joel is like against the grain. I was taught my whole life to focus completely on aiming. Aim. But then my entire shot is based on how well I'm aiming. So when I get nervous and my pin moves, then everything crumbles, because that's the foundation of my shot. And he teaches, once you put the pin in the middle, never think about it again. move to execution. And so it's really hard. Like they say, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And after you've done it for 30 years one way, it's really hard for me to do that. And I struggle bad trying to okay, like I've won this, and this, doing it this way. Like I'm just going to change everything. But I do think his way is better than my way. It's just hard for me to.
Are you specifically considering changing? Because I mean, like, part of me is like, why would Levi change anything except for like, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. You have mentioned like, the indoor stuff. Mm-hmm. That's something you struggle with a little more than
this is exactly why. Yeah. And so I am thinking about trying to incorporate his process into dot shooting. I don't think his process works for 3D. And I would tell Joel that because you can't see what you're aiming at. And so there's no middle for your subconscious to latch to, Mm-hmm. It's a constantly changing. So I'm aiming 2 inches right of a shadow that's moving because the wind's blowing the leaf, and so like I got to constantly check. Okay, the wind stopped, boom, right there, just to the right of that leaf, boom, it's got a fire, and so if I was to put it there and then, forget it. Well, the wind blew the leaf 2 inches and now I'm aiming 2 inches the wrong way and I'm just sitting there thinking I'm still in the right spot. So 3D is a lot more instinct and quicker execution. There's no middle. There's no like on the bag target where there's a big bullseye, you go to the middle, your mind knows what the middle is all the time. Mm-hmm. So because I did Joel's method this year after Vegas for a month straight indoors and thought, this is it. Like this is what I've been missing in indoors and target shooting my whole life. I went out to shoot a 3D round and was like, never mind, this don't work,
Yeah.
And like, I don't think I'll ever change a thing in 3D because I've been like, that's what I've done since I was this big. And like what I've done has worked, but indoors I'm very hot and cold. Like I might be there at the end. I might win. I might not, I've won them and then I might totally embarrass myself. I never know which Levi's going to show up. And I think it's cause it's based so much on my aiming. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, or you could have like the situation I had today when you have, I guess, anxiety from staying up too late and drinking too much the night before. My pin float was very rapid.
Yeah, very quick.
Very quick.
Along with your heart rate.
With my heart rate was, I don't think it's been below 100, but like it's, I'm following what you guys are saying there, but. Kind of moving on to different topics. I wanted to hit on some things that I guess aren't traditional to talk about, things that can go, people have varying opinions on. And one of them was there's like this whole thing, I've been seeing memes about it and everything where there's these different classes of hunters or people put themselves in different classes, like holding themselves to hierarchies of, I'm a DIY-OTC-Public land guy. Or, and that makes me better what I shoot, on a higher level. I'm kind of interested to hear everyone's opinions on that. And then I want to go through and start with Taylor and then walk our way through it. And then I'll give mine at the end.
You want my opinion on if shooting a deer on public land is better than shooting a deer on private land?
Just your overall thought process on the whole thing. Not really black and white as better or not, but like just like your way of thinking about it.
There's been a little bit of a division. A lot of people talking.
I think that just overall, the as a group, hunting in general, nothing good comes out of further segmenting ourselves into different little buckets and then infighting of like crossbow hunters versus bow hunters or like bait versus no bait or public land versus private land. It's like, when you go out and have a successful hunt, that could be a variety of different things. That could be taking your kid on their first hunt and seeing a deer and like having them actually like just sit in a box blind on a perfectly manicured piece of property and see a deer. Or that could be going out on public land and like, climbing a ton of vertical gain and like pushing yourself and doing whatever. Like nothing good comes out of further like segmenting and creating issues amongst our group of people would be my take on that.
Okay.
And then furthermore, like I don't get like yeah, it's hard to shoot a deer on public land sometimes, but like it's not apples to apples. Like hunting deer in Iowa in some awesome unit that's really hard to draw in is not the same as hunting public land in Pennsylvania or, you know, areas like around me, there's no public land, right? And also like to poo-poo someone who has worked their butt off to buy dirt and then work their butt off to get equipment there, to put a plan together, to stick to that plan for 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years, whatever, and like build a farm around whitetail, like that's awesome. Like good for them. And even if there's some super rich person that rolled in and bought that farm already built and they just rolled in and bought a whitetail heaven, you know, good for them. Like they worked hard elsewhere to earn that. Like why? I think more people get upset out of jealousy than that, because like who here, I mean, you have a pretty nice piece of property. You've put a lot of work into it. Like that's my ultimate goal in life, is to buy a piece of ground that I can manage to have like as mine.
Yeah.
You know, and part of that comes from, I never had that in my life. Like I've never had a spot that I have to work really hard to get access to wherever. So I don't know. I think that to segment ourselves into these little tribes is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. But I you know, it is like annoying to me when I'm like, the first question people seem to be asking now is like, did you kill it on public or private? Yeah. Is that on public? Like, what does it matter? Right. I mean, no, it wasn't. It was, but like, I grew up hunting that way, you know, like, it's not like my whole life I was spoon fed and like, here you go. You know, here's a 1,000-acre farm with giants on it. And here's the trail camera pictures and we hung the stands for you. I mean, I grew up hunting where you didn't see a deer for 2 weeks, hunting public land in North Carolina. And it was always my dream. Like if I can ever find good ground, like I want to hunt better ground. Like you can't kill big deer if they don't live there. And it's like, I want to have a chance like later. I want to own a farm and I want to like manage it. And I just think it's like people hunt for different reasons, right? I could see the draw to being like how it would feel more accomplished if you shoot a big deer on public, right? So like you're fighting for spots. You got to deal with so many people coming in, and you persevere through that and you kill a giant. That's awesome. I think some people might hunt for that reason, for that, like that feeling like, cool, I beat the deer and I beat 20 other guys that were trying to hunt in here or whatever. For me, it's not, I hunt for what I want to hunt for. Like I struggled for years on public and killed some big deer on public. But now I have the ability, thank God, to hunt some really good ground, to own some ground, you know? And so I'm like, this is what I wanted to do. This is the evolution of hunting for me that I wanted. And I'm still growing and learning and changing. And, you know, used to, it was a 4-point. That's what made me happy. I wanted to kill, you know, any legal buck made me happy, right? Hunting public ground. Well, now I'm like changing a little bit, you know, I'm like, I would really rather just find the oldest, biggest deer here and like target that one deer, you know, because that's why I like to hunt. I'm not going to look at the neighbor kid that shoots the 4-point and be like, what an idiot. Yeah. You know, what are you doing? You know, because I was that kid. It's just, I hunt for reasons I like to hunt. And, but I will be honest, it is slightly annoying. The like public guy almost seems to be like looking down his nose now. Yeah. Like, I shot a 120-inch on public. I'd like to see you do that. You know, that's almost like the conversation I get. I'm like, I did do that. Yeah. For years. Like,
and congrats for doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome. Job, but like, I don't want to do that anymore. Right. You know? But I don't know. It's I agree with you. The fighting is ridiculous. I feel like we'll find anything to fight about.
Oh yeah. And everybody in like, I mean, the same thing is like, oh, you need a heavier arrow, or like, oh, do you use an expandable broadhead? It's like, dude, like, what does it matter, man? Like, you know, oh yeah, your compound, or like, you know, your lighted sight, Garmin sight, like whatever. It's just like, you know, guys.
And if those people that say those things like, oh, you know, public or private, and first of all, you know, they already have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah,
and they're
exactly.
And like, if those people would actually go back and reflect on why they're actually asking that question, and it normally comes down to their own ego is hurt because they don't have the opportunity to do that or whatever. And it's like, it's like, okay, I say someone like you, or like I see, Cam Hanes getting smashed all the time. And it's like, first of all, he has proven himself through his whole life getting up to that point. Second of all, even if he didn't, he obviously worked to the point where he can go on these hunts, or you or anybody that is able to go on, go higher quality ground and stuff. It's like they work to that point, and that's what they want to do. Like, who gives a shit? Like, I just can't grasp that feeling. I think if people would actually have that serious conversation with themselves, why they're asking these questions, it's the same thing if someone looks at someone, say, driving a nice vehicle, come up with 1,000 reasons why.
That's stupid. Waste of money.
Yeah.
But like exactly. Cam says, like I've heard Cam say it, he's like, and he's right, like 99.9% of these people that give him a hard time, given the same opportunity, would go hunt where Cam hunt.
Yeah.
Like Cam roughed it for so many years. Like, would I rather go hunt public where I might see a 300-inch bull in 10 days of hunting, or go hunt the San Carlos Indian Reservation where I have a very good chance of shooting a 400-inch bull and I'm going to see hundreds of nice elk this week?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Let me think. I don't know where I want to go.
That sounds like a terrible week.
Yeah. I would rather walk 50 miles and probably see a raghorn running the other way with 3 arrows sticking out of it. Like, I doubt it.
Yeah.
Because of their low FOC and expandable
broadheads. You would be shooting expandable than under an 800 grain broad or arrow.
Probably those swackers not being able to penetrate.
Dang swackers.
What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, I think on both ends of the spectrum, you have some obnoxious people. You have those public land guys that are kind of beating their chest and poking at the people that have worked hard to put themselves in those types of positions. But then I think there's guys at the other end of the spectrum too that, maybe they are hunting some really highly managed farms, but they want to give everybody big buck advice. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And they act like they're the expert. Now, I have a ton of respect for like those guys that have worked and are managing a farm, but I do look at that as a different thing, not as less than or more than. I just look at it as a different thing than the guy that's going on like a DIY hunt and on unmanaged ground. I have a ton of respect for both because I know the one with the farm takes a lot of time, a lot of hard work, a lot of commitment and sacrifice. I mean, that is to definitely be respected. But for me personally, to make sense of it, and I think for a lot of younger hunters coming up that think, I should be able to, I'm just going to throw their names out there, but listen to guys like the Drurys, that have made a beautiful place for themselves, that they're always going to have trophy deer. They expect to be able to hunt and see deer like that when it's not reality, and they're taking their advice. So I do think they're not to be separate, but to know that there is a difference between the two. And then there's a lot of it in between, you know what I mean? So I worry about, Tony Peterson and I talked about this, and I do worry about sometimes on that, when you get to that real high level of management where you're buying up more ground and then you're buying up more and trying to keep more people out, and you're raising these deer to a certain age, and the management gets such a high level where the deer maybe aren't even acting quite like wild deer anymore as much. It starts to resemble something that's a little different. And then I worry about that because it does seem like you can get to that level where it's just like, man, it's almost so far-fetched and unrealistic. It's like, I don't know. That's just my opinion, and I'm not saying it is, but it does make you think. And then it makes you think too, like, are we losing some of the woodsmanship in hunting? I had that conversation with Tony, and I felt compelled to talk about that because I do think old school woodsmanship, reading sign and figuring these animals out and putting in time and finding them is an important skill. And I do feel like with all this focus on big bucks and management and then technology and cell cameras and all this stuff, it's like we're losing that. We're heading down a path that is away from that. So I do feel compelled to talk about that this is still a way. Mm-hmm. This is still a way, and I think it's important to keep that alive. So I don't know, when we had that conversation, I didn't want it to come across like I was poo-pooing on like the management guys, because I'm the same way. I'd love to own a farm, and management in my own way, but I don't want it to be ever be a situation where there's deer that are almost used to my presence and resembling more like cattle than wild deer, and I'm not saying I know that that's what some of those situations are like, but it almost appears like you can kind of approach that type of situation almost. If you get enough ground, you keep enough people out, you feed them. So, I'm kind of like, I see both sides. I kind of fall somewhere in the middle, but yeah, I do think the obnoxious people on both sides are the majority of the problem. And most people, probably 80% of the people, fall somewhere in the middle where they do hunt some private ground, or they have some permission where maybe they're the only people. I have some permission spots where, I'm passing deer and hoping that they make it. It's the same type of thing, I'm trying to manage best I can. It's just not on that level. And then I hunt public land where there's people everywhere and trying to grind it out. So, I see the argument, but there's the bad apples on each end of the spectrum. I think sometimes some of those people that kind of claim themselves as the whitetail experts are hunting those highly managed properties. And then I think guys can take offense to that a little bit. We're like, you're giving us advice on how to shoot big bucks where, a lot of these people don't have that opportunity. So I think if some of these people were just more forthright with their situation, I worked hard. This is what it is. This is how I've turned this into a highly managed piece of property. This is how I shoot the biggest, oldest buck in this situation. I think being more open and honest with that and putting it out there, it'd be a little more accepted.
And with all the new hunters that have come into hunting in the last couple of years as well, like you don't want them to feel like bad about shooting that little forkhorn, right? Because all they're seeing on screen time and social and everything are these giant slobs that are coming off, well,
that was me. Like, when I started off, I was hunting in Michigan where 100-inch buck, 110-inch buck's a heck of a trophy with a bow. And, I was shooting some deer like that and kind of climbing up the ladder, started shooting some Pope and Young, some 130s. And then I remember like the magazines, everything. It's like these big 160-inch plus bucks. I told myself I'm not shooting anything under a 140 in Michigan. I didn't see one for 3 years. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it can give...
You can't kill what's not there.
Yeah, it can give the people, the younger hunters that Levi are that real earlier. Impressionable that so much focus on that can kind of take away maybe what hunting is really about. So I don't know. It's a good topic to discuss because there is definitely lately, it does seem like there's a lot of.
Yeah. And there's no black and white to it. There's not like a right or wrong answer to be able to figure it out because everyone's got their different values and the reasons why they do it and what their kind of goals and expectations are. So it's kind of it's definitely a tough thing to navigate. And to me, it really boils down to is not judging like what someone is doing. I get the argument about like the newer hunters side of it. It's like, okay, they don't know the difference between like, okay, taking tips from Andy May versus Mark Drury, depending on where they're hunting at and what their expectations or what's even available, I guess. So I can see both sides of that.
Yeah. I think, it's, you have to be able to kind of read between the lines now because there's so much information, right? There's social media, TV shows, YouTube, everything. It's like everybody's an expert. And like a lot of guys, not a lot of guys, some guys really don't know what they're talking about. Like maybe they just have a lot of money and have bought ground and have somebody else manage them. And they're going to shoot 200-inch deer every year and really couldn't hunt their way out of a wet paper bag. There is that. But there's also, I feel like a lot of times, the guy that's worked his way through and just wants to manage big deer and is a great hunter and a woodsman, can read sign and big timber and acorns and no food plots, can do all that, but like really likes managing deer, gets mixed in with that guy just because he has ground, just because he kills big deer every year. Like he just doesn't know what he's talking about. He only kills those big deer because of the ground he owns. Mm-hmm. I think that's where you have to be careful where you put these guys. And there's guys that hunt public alone that shoot 120-inch deer every year that if you turn them loose on that piece of property, they're going to kill the biggest deer on it, because they're great hunters. Mm-hmm. And 120-inch deer is the biggest deer that was where they were hunting.
Yeah.
And so you can't get stuck on that. Like, oh, it's a tiny little 10 point, what's the biggest deer within 10 square miles of here and he killed it. And if you turn him loose on your farm, he's going to kill that deer too, you know, the biggest deer on it. So I don't know. I think we all just need to hunt because of why we want to hunt and don't point so many fingers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's good advice.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I thought this was a good conversation for this group because we all are on kind of, I feel like, different varying scales of the spectrum and have different point of views based on, you know, where we came from to where we came from. All I'll say to end that part is that I hope to be able to work towards having land that I can manage and be able to do that. And it's like right now I love chasing whitetails in the big woods, but at some point I'd love to be able to go, you know, see a deer every day. That'd be a start. Exactly. And you know, and move my evolution as I grow as a hunter and
it's just so awesome that Levi was kind enough to extend his farm to us.
Yeah,
until
really
we're
nice.
able
really
to get
nice
there.
to me.
So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
It means the world.
Yeah, I'm actually on the way home. I'm stopping by and doing some shed hunting.
I thought we were going with him right now.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Jordan's been all over it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Come show you
He
around.
shared me some waypoints.
Yeah.
He showed us the back access points.
Yeah, we saw how many deer in Toose's 3. Yeah, 3 deer. So,
All right.
good luck.
One of them was the right deer, though,
One of
right?
them was a big one.
So that's all that matters.
One of them was a big one.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation, and let's bring in. We're gonna switch out some people here. So if I want to keep Levi on for this part, but Taylor, let's have you swap out with one of you guys here, jump in, and then Andy jump out too. But I want to leave in Levi for one portion.
Yeah, I meant to tell Taylor during that his performance in School of Rock was spot on, dude.
Oh yeah, the Jack Black lookalike.
Dude, it's unbelievable. Try to unsee that now, people. Yeah.
I get that all the time.
Yeah, it's been driving me
betcha.
nuts. I'm like, who does he remind me of?
Yeah.
Like, I know somebody. Jack Black.
All right, so we just had Garrett Prahl sit down and the Johnny Stewart back on. Both these guys have been on the show, so again, I'm not going to do any sort of intros or anything. You guys have all been on the show, but as they've been sitting in the background, kind of watching, listening, understanding the way we're going about this, and I wanted to talk about another kind of topic when it comes down to broadheads and talking about, you know, there's other debate. There's debates about everything, but when it comes down to expandables and fixed blades and, you know, what's right and what's not, and that whole ordeal. So I'd like maybe even let's start out with Garrett a little bit and kind of talking about your thoughts on the whole concept of you know, expandables versus the fix, and then kind of your thought process and how you think about it. Not that, you know, just your thought process.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's pretty easy to fall into one of two camps and go on one side of the fence or the other, but both of them definitely have pros and cons. I mean, I can pretty easily objectively state that, you know, if you're shooting a long distance, like mechanical, no doubt is going to have an advantage. But at the same point in time, if I'm hunting thicker timber and even a 30-yard shot, I'm not going to have shooting lanes, well, then maybe it's not as big of a difference. Maybe I'm more likely to have that hard quartering away shot, or, you know, so a lot of times I usually have a mixed quiver where I might have like 2 expandables and like 3 fix, and I've shot all of them. And so I know where they'll hit. But 9 times out of 10, I'm usually grabbing for the fixed blade just because I'm hunting that type of scenario. But if I'm out in like Nebraska or something that's kind of windy, maybe I'll reach for that mechanical in that scenario. I think for me, the biggest thing is, are they razor sharp? You know, I'll take the blades off mechanical, run them over the strop to make sure that they're cutting hair. Same thing with the fixed blades, and just durability through the component system and the head itself. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, make sure that it hits where I want to hit.
Yeah. And I know, because I wanted you in on this one because I know you are, for lack of better terms, a geek when it comes to testing things and wanting to understand every, you know, aspect of them from the engineering side of you, I guess, is where I was getting at with that. And so it's interesting to hear that side of it. And Levi, what about you? Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I grew up, you know, when we were hunting back in the day before mechanicals. You know, I was Muzzies, buy a 6-pack at Walmart and that's kind of lasts you for the season,
Terminator 125.
Oh yeah, the Wasp, the Thunderheads, and I had good experiences and bad experiences with that. I'd hit deer well, and they'd run 30 yards with a great blood trail, and I'd hit them in the same spot, and they'd run 400 with a drop, and maybe I didn't find them. And I find my broadheads, the blade broke, whatever, and I'm like, did that happen on entry? When did that happen? And then the first mechanicals came out, and I hated them. I hated mechanicals. The rear open mechanicals, slap cut mechanicals, I didn't like that. Like it was for a long time. And then, and I really don't even think it's a mechanicals to fixed argument as it is like which mechanical, how does it operate, which fixed, how does it operate, right? Because all mechanicals and all fixed aren't on the same level. And really for me, like I think it's all about your confidence and what you're confident in. And if you hate mechanicals and have had nothing but bad experiences with them, you probably shouldn't shoot them because you're going to be having that in your head the whole time, right? For me, that's the fixed side of it. I only shoot a fixed head if it's a state where a mechanical is illegal. But I also have a 31-inch draw and pull 80 pounds, and I'm not ever struggling for energy or, anything. And then, so for me, I started shooting a swacker in 2010, 2009, something like that. And the whole thing that intrigued me on it was what I talked about earlier, shooting deer on the entry, like always making sure my broadheads were razor sharp. But the problem was when you shoot a fixed or a cut on contact mechanical, it has to cut through fur, bone, fat, meat before it gets to the vitals, no matter what. So how sharp are they once they reach the vitals? Maybe you broke some blades off before you reached vitals. And I felt like that's where my inconsistency on blood trails was coming from, was maybe went through a rib and it dulled those blades before it got to vitals and didn't hemorrhage like it should have. Or maybe I broke a blade off. And so with a swacker that opens inside that first rib cage, that's why that intrigued me so much. I was like, I know that when I hit vitals, it's cutting with fresh blades every single time. And so if you don't get an exit, your blood trail may not be great, but if you hit them between the butt and the shoulder, they don't go very far, but it's like my consistency of recovery and the length of trails now is like very few weird scenarios happening. Where in the past I'd shoot one and I would think it's double lung and I'm instantly sick to my stomach. Like, which one am I going to get today? Where I feel like my consistency on recovery has been so good. Like if I hit them in the rib cage, it's great. Now, obviously with mechanicals, I don't want to hit them in the shoulder, period. And I do feel like a 2-blade single bevel type head, fixed head is way better in a dead in the knuckle bone shot. But for me, that's the only advantage when it comes to that. But not saying that's the case if you go from a rage to a, fix or something that split fire that opens, because like he said, on angles, those are awful. A slap cut mechanical on an angle is awful. It'll ride that rib cage all the way down on the outside and it's over. You think you smoked them and you never went inside the cavity. But again, where the swacker is, that point goes in 2 inches before it opens, so you don't have that deflection of those slap blades hitting. And so, that's why it's really hard for me to compare.
Yeah, no, I get it, and it's not as, again, as with anything, it's not as black and white.
It's not as black and white as people think.
It's fixed and first mechanical, so to speak. Like, so I'd have in my quiver, I typically have three fixed and 2 mechanical, similar to what you have in mine. It depends on the scenario. Like, when I'm hunting off the ground and I'm hunting whitetails off the ground, I like to have fixed on there because there's a chance that I might be shooting a frontal shot on a deer at 15 yards, and for that I feel the confidence of having that in there. And for a while I was real hardcore like fixed because I had such issues with certain mechanicals in the past not opening and all these different things, and it gave me that bad taste in my mouth until actually recently. Actually, last year was the first year I started, and I shot my whitetail with a mechanical, and I was like, man, it opened it up a lot more and had those advantages to it. And I can see that side of it too, where it's like, okay, I have the ability for the blood trails and the recovery and all those things. And I just think it's so situational, and it's not a hard answer one way or another. But for me, it's like, it's very situational what I feel confident in. And it's got to be, for the fixed side of things, it's got to be something that can shoot well, which most of it comes down to your bow tuning, but still at the same time, you got to have confidence. And I don't want to be like someone that has to switch my sight up or do something just because I'm throwing broadheads on. Like, that just feels wonky and doesn't give me that confidence that I need, What about you, Johnny? You've probably used a bunch of different broadheads over the years.
Yeah, I have. And it was interesting listening to Levi, what he said about the Schwacker, how he said it goes in 2 inches before it expands in like an angle shot, and that type of broadhead helps. I think in the past I thought of it as I wanted my broadhead to kind of cut on the way in to give a bigger entrance hole. But I guess maybe that was stuck in my head. I didn't really, think too much about it. So, but usually if you're in a tree anyways, your hole's going to be down low, but going back to what Garrett said about the mixed quiver, if you guys seen me shooting today, you've really seen a mixed quiver.
You had a couple different arrows and broadheads in there.
You guys are novice. I mean, when you get to my level, you got the different size shaft, the length, and that. One day you guys will get there, But I think as far as broadheads, if you're if you have a well placed shot, any broadhead's going to do the trick. I think. What you feel confident in. I don't have the length and the energy maybe that Levi has. So you just make sure with your setup that you have good penetration. And always try to aim low, keep low on the bottom and a hard up, maybe an inch or so, because I feel like there's always a chance, that a deer kid, like Levi said earlier, and I was sitting over there, he puts a lot in his brain to help occupy it as opposed to like competition shooting, and there is a lot to think of. Like, and that's one big thing that I tell people is like, is that deer alert? Is he going to drop? That's a, and it's almost to a moving target somewhat, But you got to count, and your experience will help you figure out. But I just always said aim low and lethal, in a well placed shot. But I've stuck with the Ramcat for a few years, and it's just the overall. I think when I was younger, I used really young, 18, I used like 70, 80 pound fingers, long axle wheels. And I remember the first expandable we used was, I forget, I remember the name earlier, but I think the cut in diameter was like 2.5, 3 inches, which we figured, hey man, we weren't good shots, but we had the poundage and the weight, and we were just shooting, you had good penetration, and you had a little bit of room for error when you were shooting fingers with them big blades. But then I remember it kind of shifted, and I got talked into, I'm talking 20 some years ago, that, now the thing's very lightweight, to pull very lightweight, and light and speed was everything, light arrows. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But the market went that way. And I'm like, and I went with it, and I was still trying to use expandables, and I didn't get no penetration. So I gradually worked my way back to having some energy, some more poundage. But through the years, I used mainly expandables. And I think with me, I put more effort into spending my time in the woods scouting this when I had the time. And it wasn't so much tuning and trying different broadheads. So I think I stuck, like maybe what Beau said, expandable to be more accurate. But I got into the Ramcat maybe, I'm thinking 6-8 years ago, and just the sound that I'd used other expandables, and the sound it made on impact and the things I've did that really impressed me, But I think a well placed shot, any broadhead is going to do the trick. So
yeah, and it's funny. I feel like with you, Johnny, though, you just, it doesn't matter what's on the end of your arrow, you're just going to kill the deer.
Yeah, and over the years, I think it's confidence. No matter what you do and how much experience, you have the experience and the time, and it's instinctual to where you mentally believe that you're going to kill that animal. I mean, for years, I had, and I still do have the target panic, and I sometimes, when I was younger, 18, 15, I loved shooting my bow. I developed target panic. It's been a long time since I loved it. And I just lived with it. And I put more of my love into chasing deer and learning them. But through them years shooting and hunting, I was a bad shot, but I figure if I hit a pie plate, I'm good. But when I get into the woods and I hunt, I was so confident in killing deer that I see the arrow going through the animal before I even shoot it. Like I know, and my friends would make fun of me. You can't hit the broadside of the barn, like literally. I said, I know, but I'm going to kill that deer. Like I believe that in life in general. If you believe it, you will see it. You know what I mean? That's how I was. And that's how I still am. And I do want to get back into, and I think I'm going to make an effort this year, watching everybody here, everybody was a really excellent shot, I thought. And I'm like, man, I need to, and putting yourself around people that are that good at their craft and what they do, like a lot of these guys here, that makes you a better person. So associate yourself with them people. And so I think this year I'm going to focus on, getting better, maybe work on that target panic. But yeah, I think just like you said, Beau, I just believe I'm going to kill that animal. Like I know it, I see it, and it kind of happens, which is maybe not how everybody is, but I think you put that much time and effort and you do it so much, it's like riding a bike, and you know that it's going to happen, that's your outcome.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So I wanted to swap out Levi, unless you have anything else you want to say there. We're going to get Levi out and pull Lee in. So thanks for coming on, Levi.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Lee, come on in. You
pants on, or you just getting in here like that? All right.
This is awkward. Yeah, were you in the hot tub again?
Not yet.
Oh, you were just about to get in the hot tub.
I was about to get in the hot tub, and then Taylor came out yelling at us. Well, like, hey, you're about to get on.
Why do you have your towel on?
Because I'm still wet.
Oh, okay.
From last night.
I gotcha. Well, yeah, so I wanted to bring Lee on for this conversation with this group here. And Lee, you haven't been in here much, but the framework is basically that I'm asking like a specific question or a specific topic and then getting everyone's perspectives on it.
Okay.
And with you guys, it's curious because we all kind of hunt different types of places. And I wanted to say, what is your favorite time of the year that you feel like you're the most confident in killing a mature buck, and why? And we'll start with you, Lee, since you just jumped on.
Yeah. So I think what's cool about the group we have is that I feel like we're very diverse, that we just have kind of guys like on all ends of the spectrums, and it's a really cool blend. Because I like learning from other people. I mean, Garrett and I were like on the drive here from the airport, just sitting there talking about, like, I've never hunted Michigan before. We're asking about like different forges and stuff, certain times of the year. I'm planning on hunting up there this year, and we're kind of talking like game plan type stuff, like when are you going to be there? He had a lot of knowledge that like I haven't yet to learn. So I think it's just cool that like we all kind of come from different areas. And there's just a lot of knowledge like in this group.
Yeah.
Which is a very special thing. But to kind of nail down your question, like you want me to just say like the specific time of year that is my favorite to try and kill a big deer?
Yeah. That you feel the most confident.
Opening week.
Okay.
For sure.
And why is that?
I work really hard to find a deer's bedroom. Most of my scouting, I mean, I scout year round, but a lot of scouting that I do is taking place now, February, March, April. And I feel like a lot of guys almost lose interest in deer hunting, probably because they're thinking about bass fishing, they're thinking about turkey hunting, or, whatever it is. It's just not deer season. They're not thinking about it. But I really like to use those months to really try and hone down on a deer. Because if you can find them then, more oftentimes than not, you're pretty close to their summer range. And I feel like when you can really hone in on a deer that time of the year, like the first week of the season, not every state opens at different times, but when they're still kind of in their summer patterns, if you can find where they're like the area that they want to be in, I think they're super vulnerable. They're still on a pattern, predictable, and as long as you play the situation right, I think that you can, have make a good play at a mature buck early like that.
Yeah. And they haven't learned you yet, and you're trying to hunt them and put the pressure on it.
Right.
It's funny.
Your first sit is always your best sit. I think every sit after that, they're learning you. So it's like that first fresh, like it's the first sits of the year. I think that like deer are unbelievable at patterning people and patterning pressure. And so I just think that like when you're at the front end of that, your first sits are your best.
And you said something else. You and I have talked about this because, we'll jump on the phone, it seems like once a week, and talk about we're out scouting and doing all these things. And I was like, man, I haven't been able to get out as much. And you're like, you're still doing more than 99% of the people are right 100%, now. And I was like feeling guilty, like I need to get out more. I need to do this. And it's like, well, there's not too many that are like us, even though we're all going different places and different types of places, but we're doing the same thing. And that's where the homework's done.
Well, the deer, and I was talking to Garrett about this on the way, and I've talked to you about it, but like the homework I'm doing in February and March is what will potentially, hopefully, if the stars align, will kill this deer during the season, during the fall. And if I were to just kind of go up there like in the summer and try and figure it out, like it may be too late at that point to try and figure out all the stuff you need to figure out. Like it's the time and effort that you put in now that kills a deer a lot of times when the fall rolls around. Mm-hmm. And so like that is, I feel like to consistently kill big deer, it's got to be a year round, like 365 day thing. And every bit of information you can gather about that deer, where he wants to be at certain times of the year, it all helps pay off in the end of, putting yourself in the best position to get in front of that deer. Yeah. Just learning everything you can. And that to me is a 365 day a year kind of deal. It's not just it's August, let's go, look around a bit. And that's fine for the people that do that. And people have success doing that. But I think that like
take it to the next level type of deal.
People really overlook those springtime months to find big deer and just get clued in on, shed hunting is a huge advantage to just like learning terrains that you're not really getting to see. For me, like my style is door knocking. So in the springtime, I'll have no ambition to get, obviously I have the ambition to get permission, but I'll just knock on a door just to say, hey, can I shed hunt? And I'll learn so much from just being able to kind of walk these properties, as opposed to where if I'm just asking for hunting permission, like they may say no, and I don't ever get to lay eyes on that property and kind of learn what's going on in these places.
Sounds like a bit of an addiction, but that's what it has to be to that's where you have to be if you want to be successful in what you're doing. You have to be doing that 365 or as much, or not maybe that as often as you can.
Yeah.
You need to know, and that's the word I always come back to in different times we talked on podcasts or whatever, and Lee kept saying it. You got to know, in the word KNOW, you need to know what's going on. There's a lot of tools, like Spartan Forge and what have you to help you. But being out there and knowing everything is the key to being successful, so that's what it comes down to a lot, I think.
Yeah. So Garrett, what's your favorite time of year, or when you think you have the best chances of killing a mature buck, and why?
I'd say for me, it's definitely been late October. I'd like to say early in the season. I'd like to say the last week of season. My experience with the last week of season is that in theory, it should work so great, but I've always had a really tough time finding that perfect scenario. And we got, snow, it's crunchy. You can't get as close as you could early season. Early season, you can sneak right up on them and set up close. But a lot of times early season, the areas that I'm hunting, maybe it's an out-of-state trip. I don't have the intel leading up to it. I'm trying to figure stuff out on the fly. There's max food. There's max cover. And it's a lot of trial and error and throwing darts at the map to try and figure out like where a big one might be. I might be able to see deer, but finding a big one without having that intel going into it is tough. Or it might be a scenario where I can't run trail cameras because of the type of land that it is. Or it might be a scenario where, I know that deer are going to show up in the rut. They're going to show up late October. And I'll try my hardest, like let's say it's big multi-thousand acre piece, but they're feeding on browse, they're feeding on acorns. And it's like, yeah, I can find the beds, but then like there's so many additional challenges to that very specific thing because the mature bucks, they're just not all over the place like most deer are. Whereas late October, it's like, okay, I know year over year from the scouting in the spring, from the actual hunting, the observations, the trail camera data, these deer are going to show up at this time, at this place. It's almost a guarantee. And so if I take that prep time and I get, this is the tree I need to sit in to hunt a deer that's working this scrape. These 3 bucks all work this scrape within this, 1 week period generally. Maybe one of them gets killed, maybe a new one comes in. But it's like, 5-year plan, get that all laid out. Then my confidence in that type of setup is a lot higher. It seems like once the rut gets going, then my sightings of the mature ones go down again. It seems like, late October 31st, November 1st, like depending on the land, then you see one right on a doe, and it's like you don't see that buck unless he's like right on a doe in heavy cover.
Isn't it crazy that like almost to the date you'll have these deer show back up on a scrape? Like you've obviously got a lot of history in this certain area that you're talking about describing. It's like you said, generally like within this week is when they'll hit. Like to me, that has always blown my mind because like deer don't have a calendar. Mm-hmm. They're not knowing they're just going by kind of what's happening inside of them. And it's like I've had deer that I had no idea where their summer range was, but almost within 24 hours of like October 10th, they'd show up on this like same exact scrape year after year after year. And it just kind of like blew me away at like how almost dead on to the date that they will kind of use these patterns again. And that to your point is just like hit, kind of years of knowing the history of a place like that and like how those deer are kind of using an area. But
it's tough because you can't use that approach on like an out-of-state trip because you don't have that multi-year worth of, aggregate of information to look at.
Right.
So, you adjust your standards accordingly. But it's like you figure a little bit out 1 year, and then maybe there was one buck that you saw sightings or camera pictures of or whatever, but he'd only show up on those scrapes maybe like once a week or once every other week. Then you do some more scouting and find a different scrape. Then that year, it's like, man, he was on there 3 times a week. We're getting closer to that buck's, where he likes to be during that time.
Yeah.
And you got 3, 4, 5 deer. Like you're looking at all these pictures, and it's like, well, I think this one probably is spending most of his time in this block. This one's here. There's some overlap here. I get both of those deer on the same camera at the same time, and it's like, yeah, it's a multi-year strategy. But I mean, if we're talking bigger deer, not general deer, that's the only thing I really have a lot of confidence in.
I think history kills deer more than almost anything.
Yeah, and history repeats itself. Like you said, they don't have a calendar, but they know to be here, whether it's, amount of light, that they're entering their eye or whatever, tell them that this is, or, they live in the area and they know these does, oh man, I know she's going to come into heat, and whether, some of them does are still alive. It's just like, okay, so then you see the time you were there and, the following years when like, man, I got to get in that area and check, stuff like that.
So Andy just hopped back on. Garrett, I told you Andy came up with me to Michigan and rode around, did the door knocking stuff. Kind of got a bit of a crash course of, have you done that before yet? Like
knocking on doors?
The door knocking, but mostly like smaller properties. I mean,
I've done a fair amount of it. Yeah, a good amount of it. But it was really cool to tag along with you and just kind of see your style and your technique. And, obviously we've known each other for a while. I've watched your stuff, so I kind of know some of the areas you target, but it was really cool to see the area you're targeting. And in particular, a deer that you are potentially going to pursue, but the detective work that you did at home and then coming all the way to Michigan, multiple times. I was so impressed by that, to be honest with you. And I know that's your game, and I know, you have the time, and this is what you do for a living, but still I asked myself after that, I was like, would I do something like that? And I was like, I don't think I would. I was really impressed by that commitment and that detective work and that effort that you put in. That was really cool to see.
Well, I think everybody here is like, we're all a little sick and twisted in our own ways that like these deer just drive us nuts.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I mean, you said the word obsession but it's like beyond that.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like there's not a word to describe it. Like I almost feel like I'm addicted. Like I'll have withdrawals if I'm not like in my head actively pursuing an animal. Mm-hmm. And it's just like if I'm, it's almost like I'm lost if I'm not in the game of like trying to figure out a deer.
Yeah,
it's like a problem. And I think at some point in my life, like we would probably not film hunts anymore, and I don't think I would ever change a thing of me personally, like what I'm doing. I just can't stop.
I feel like, to me, it's the learning curve that you get every time, because every time you go in the forest or wherever you may be hunting, it's always evolving and changing, whether it's time of year or years later, and it's something your brain is seeing new stuff every time, to where to me it's a stimulation that I like to have. That's why I always find myself going to these new areas and learning this and keep like growing my brain as a muscle, and it's just like, that's what attracts me to it. It's like, I notice myself, if I watch myself on a video, my eyes are moving like 100 mile an hour. I'm looking at every little thing. There's so many details. There's a story there, and you just gotta, you gotta read it, but I feel just like, because there's so much to see it. And that's what that's what I really like about it is just, it's always something new that you're learning there, whether it's a different buck or a different piece of ground, but and then it's kind of like you can get lost in it to where you can't escape, and it's like a rabbit hole, and you're just and I was like, man, I got to get back home and get to north, because I'm gone. And like, that's why a lot of times I hunt myself, because usually when I go hunting with people, it's like at night we'll go eat dinner, and like when I'm out myself, like I'll sit in my vehicle and study my map, and I'll sleep there and I'll think about it. But that's who I am. And I know that I kind of have a problem. So I kind of go by myself. It's kind of like when other people are with me, it's kind of like, having your buddy with you, kind of communicate, and it's the hangout, the enjoyment. But like, I'm really my best when I'm by myself, because it's like a never ending process going on, whether I come out at a stand or, I've drove around before daylight, to see where the deer are. And it's just like, it's not even normal for you to be around the person, because you are like, that's who you are. It's like, I don't even have someone that I want to talk to, because I'm just my brain's so consumed with what's going on. And you just, that's why a lot of times, and the stuff I've done, people are like go out at night, check your cameras, middle of the night, like things I've done. It's like,
I've done
like most of the people
too.
They're not going to participate in the things I do. You're just, like you said, a little bit crazy.
I think to do anything at an elite level and continue to grow, there has to be that level of obsession. And, a lot of people can look at that as almost an unhealthy level, but that's how you get those really elite type people. Not calling any of us elite, but that you see those people like Levi, and those guys can really do things at a high level. It's an obsession. It's almost like a sickness. But like you were saying, if you're not doing something every day to try to find, like, track down these big animals, I have that same obsession and that same thought every day. For me, it's a little harder because, I work 2 jobs. I got a kid. I'm doing a lot of commuting back and forth. So the way I do that for myself, I have to do something every single day that is going to make me a better hunter or improve my chances during a hunting season. So the way I make sense of that in my mind is I'm just kind of scratching and clawing for time. So it might be, I can't go out and door knock, or I can't go out and scout. So, okay, I'm going to make sure I shoot my bow. I'm going to get up 30 minutes early before work and shoot, or I'm going to make sure I get there, that 30 minutes before dark. Or if I can't even do that, okay, I'm going to put the bag target right in my living room, and I'm going to fire, 30 shots just working on shot execution. So it's like, I feel I fulfilled that need to feel like I did something to get better. Yeah. And then on the days where I do have a little more time, yes, I'm going out scouting. I'm trying to get some more permission, or I'm scouting a new piece of public or whatever. But I have that same urge and drive inside of me that it's something I want to do every day, is just be like enthralled in this process. And it can be hard for a guy working a 9 to 5, with a family, but you can still do it. And it takes some balance, but you can still, find little things that you can do throughout the day to kind of fill that void and make you feel like you're doing something to become a better hunter. So
I think for me, one of my biggest challenges personally is going to, like, I'm single guy, not married. So like I've got all this freedom, but I think at some point, like when you do have a family and a wife, it's like, you got to turn that off at some point, because like I feel lost if I have not found like the next challenge I want to pursue. And I kind of felt like Drew and I have like sort of conquered Atlanta in a way. And the next challenge that like kept us, you know, like just burning for it was like, go to new places, do what we've done, but go do it in a different place. Find another animal to like just the challenge of kind of figuring it out. And if I'd like, before I got in the game on that deer, like I was like losing my mind. But almost now that I've like, okay, I'm getting pictures of them, I'm kind of putting the pieces. It's like I can kind of like breathe again. It's weird, but like I know when I have a family, like I'm gonna have to probably shut that off at some point. Like I can't drive to Michigan and just randomly and just go do it. Like it's just not an option. But
you gotta accept the fact that you might not be able to do things quite at the pace and maybe not at the level that you once did. But you've built up so much hunting knowledge and instinct that will carry on. You'll still be able to achieve, like for me, like I've almost been able to achieve better results as I've gotten older with less time.
Yeah.
Because I was just efficient. I was just like you for, you know, before I had my daughter. I mean, every day of the week I'd get out of work and I'd go scout until darkness came, you know, and that's just, I had to be out there. I wanted to be out there as much, and you kind of build that knowledge. And then when some, you know, priorities come that are more important, like family and kids, you can tone it down a little bit, you know, and you can and still go out there and still hunt at a high level.
Well, so the obsession part of it, like, and we're on a Spartan Forge retreat. I mean, we're all a part of Spartan Forge. That's why we're here. I mean, even when we've scouted all day, like after the time you and I kind of hung out and did all that stuff, like I would still lay up at night just studying my Spartan Forge, the maps and stuff, and just like dropping pins, new places. I took a screenshot because on a phone you can like look at your hourly usage of each app and stuff. It was like 13 hours I was on Spartan Forge in like 2 days of just being up there and scouting. And it's like, you know, that's obsessive. Mm-hmm. To be looking at a map that long and just like, you know.
Well, your results, you know, like your results speak to that. You know what I mean? It's a lot of people want to achieve those types of results. And I mean, you're a perfect example of the type of level of effort and obsession that it takes. And it, you know, it's not for everybody. And when you do get a family and stuff, yeah, you have to kind of balance that out. And there's a lot of successful hunters that we all know that have had failed marriages, were crappy dads, you know, so it is a thing where, you know, when that time comes that you do have to prioritize it and put that above, you know, but you can still, you know, if your partner loves you and cares about you, you know, you'll always have that time to put into towards your passion. Yeah. But yeah, it is a big adjustment. It was a hard thing for me to go from 6 days a week, you know, freedom, doing whatever I want and constantly scouting, finding new ground and figuring this deer out to, you know, now I just get a little sliver each day to do something, and it might just be fire a few arrows.
Yeah. Well, you've learned to become very efficient with your time, and I think that's probably from you know, a lot of all those years of being able to put in that time, and then when you had to adjust, it's like, okay, I need to not trying to speak for you, but you know, figure out what these priorities are, and maybe it's I can't scout 10 places anymore. I can only focus on 2 because this is what the time I have. Is that how have you made that adjustment, I guess?
Yeah, you know, when I started getting limited on time, like actual hunting time in the woods, I remember making a post on a forum that Garrett and I used to frequent a lot. And I said, would you drive 6 hours to hunt 2 days? I made a post on that because I had just done that and killed like a big 165-inch 9-point. And everybody was like, no, I wouldn't do that. You know, I wouldn't travel 6 hours to hunt 2 days. Well, I just wanted to get other people's opinions, but I was so limited on time now. Like I was still doing that. I was driving 6 hours, 13 hours, 8 hours to hunt a weekend. And most people are like, well, you can't get it done in a weekend. I mean, you might get lucky, But I would do that and try to stretch it out to 3, sometimes 2 days, sometimes 3 days, sometimes 4 days. And what I found was like a lot of the knowledge and instinct and skill that I had built up from all those years of putting all my time into it and just holding it. I mean, it was higher than my job. It was higher than relationships with girlfriends. It was just, that's what I did. And then, obviously you become a dad. It's like, boom, things shift dramatically. And I was okay with that. I mean, it doesn't compare to me, but it took a little courage to go out there and do that. And like, can I still do this? No, even though I have 2 days, I mean, that seems crazy, but I would do it. And I started having success. Now, maybe I'm not tracking down the bull of the woods in 2 days, but I was certainly going to certain states and killing respectable deer. That boosted the confidence. Like, hey, I don't need a week. I don't need 5 days. I can still get a good, solid deer in a short amount of time, just going off the knowledge and the instincts that I built. So I just started building on that. And then I started, being a little more picky and trying to add a little, calling in sick or whatever and taking 3 or 4 days, maybe getting a little pickier and upping that maybe age of the animal or the rack size of the animal, and started killing some really good deer. And now, like last year, I drove 17 hours to hunt 2 days. And most guys wouldn't do that, and I did. Yeah. And I killed 163-inch mule deer, So I have 100% confidence to do that. And I'm okay with if I don't kill anything. But it's like, in my mind, it's like I'm limited on time. If I don't do that, I don't ever get to have these adventures until she's out of the house. Yeah. But I want to be back to take her to school. I want to be back to take her to basketball practice, to work on basketball with her, my daughter I'm talking about. So that's my top priority. So I will still drive and make those long distance road trips, even though I have limited time. And I think a lot of guys, it may seem a little intimidating or something, but I think once you have that base knowledge, you can actually do that. You can go there, and you might have to lower your standards. If you were ever in that situation, maybe you're not targeting a 180 or 170, but you're like, a solid 140, 150 in a new area that I've never been, that's still a cool hunt.
Yeah.
No,
I get it. Hey, Andy, do you want to swap out with Drew for the end here?
Yes.
Thanks. And so one of the, so I'm going to go through a question here and a thought based on some of the conversations that we had here. Is it seems like, for you, Lee, you're talking about like, not that you have it completely figured out, but like you have hunted, say the Atlanta suburbs for how long now, and you wanted to start venturing out. So what, like for like this year specifically, or maybe even looking out in 2-3 years, like what are some of the goals or the things that you want to do or you want to improve on? You may have already covered it, but let's start with you on that since you brought it up.
For the time being, and again, I talked to Garrett about this yesterday. Like, I'm looking for new experiences outside of Atlanta. I'm still addicted to like the door knocking, finding an awesome deer to pursue kind of game. But I think if I'm looking 2 or 3 years out, like I want to go, and I'm going to start this year. Drew and I are both starting this year. He's kind of already made steps going out west and experiencing other places, but like I want to go hunt large places of public. I want to kind of be well-rounded, but also like keeping the core kind of intact with like what I love to do. But I think like experiencing other perspectives, other styles of hunting, things like that I just think it keeps it fresh. Mm-hmm. Like, not that Atlanta got stale, but it was just like we've been doing it for so long. It's just like, it's exciting to go somewhere else. And I think that's what keeps the fire fresh is like, again, we've kind of talked about this, but like the new challenges, the new places, new environments. Like I got to figure out, what they're feeding on or kind of what they're doing at certain times of the year in these new places. And so, yeah, I think for me, like I'll always still hunt Atlanta. I mean, it's home, but I want to keep I want to hunt with other people. I want to experience new things. And just make sure that it doesn't ever get like stale to me.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. What about you, for you, Drew? I know like you've you and I have been talking quite a bit, and you've been like looking at more Western hunts and that kind of style. Like what are you like from evolving as a hunter? What type of experience is it that you want? What are some of your kind of goals, or where are you trending towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Western stuff is probably the low-hanging fruit for me. I've just always loved being out west, being in the mountains. I love the adventure aspect of really anything, but applying that to hunting is just like, two things in one. Just like the planning process of having to like make sure you got all the right gear, make sure you're going to the right place when you have all this territory that you can potentially go hunt. That whole aspect of it is just like really appealing to me. And it's probably because we grew up hunting Atlanta, which is the complete opposite. And I say like the adventure aspect is probably what makes me most excited about hunting. But I think you can find that in any environment, really. Like, just because we're hunting behind people's houses in the city doesn't mean that there's not adventure behind it. Because I promise you, there's adventure when you go out and knock on 200 doors to track down one specific buck and you finally get it done. Even if you are like going back and sleeping in your own bed at night versus going out west and sleeping under the stars for 10 days, without cell phone service. So like Lee said, I mean, going and hunting new species and new environments is, I think, what keeps us excited. Yeah. Excited to learn, excited to get more perspectives on hunting in general. Just being around like all the guys here, everyone has a different background in hunting and different expertise. And just because you're really good at one thing, like we're good at the urban stuff, doesn't mean that we're any better than anybody else at the Western game or hunting big public land in, the Northeast. So I want to broaden our knowledge and not feel so pigeonholed into the urban stuff while still sticking to the core, like Lee said, of what got us to where we are. Yeah. I guess that's the answer on the hunting side. And then I've been kind of behind the scenes for a lot of the time with Seek One. Like the production side is something that I'm passionate about. So constantly just kind of like pushing the envelope there, and always trying to, bring better quality and tell the story better and show the environments better and, show more respect to the animal. I think that's like a never ending pursuit.
Yeah. No, I can see that one. The quality of the production that you guys have done over the years has been incredible. But just from talking to you, like you just want to continually improve on that and go to the next level and see what's possible. And like, I mean, and you guys are talking to me about coming up and deer hunting gun season in Pennsylvania, in the big woods and changing things. I think that perspective helps so much. Like it, even though that you've been successful, in the suburbs, that might even help you by hunting different places to hunt in the suburbs because you learn different things. You say you're out with myself or you're out with Johnny or you're out with somebody. It's like you're getting those different ways of looking at it and say, Johnny's looking at a track this way or something. You're like, okay, well, how can I apply that to the situation that I have in a different location, back home or in Ohio or Michigan or whatever it might be. And it's like just taking all those things, but being around these types of people is just like, we're very
there's so
lucky
much
for
knowledge here, and we would be idiots to not be a sponge and try and soak it up from whoever we get to interact with.
I was thinking about the same conversation that I guess Johnny was telling a story about tracking deer in the snow last night. And he was saying stuff that like I've never even thought about before, mainly because it doesn't snow like down in Atlanta like it does up here. But all these little things, like even if you're just having a story with somebody, or you have one hunting experience in a different environment, like you can take that and apply it to really anywhere. Yeah. And so I guess like the point of that is never thinking that you know everything, even about where you grew up hunting. Because there's so many different perspectives out there. There's so many different scenarios and environments. And everyone kind of like goes on their own path to figure out what worked best for them. And just like talking to people and experiencing those things is kind of what makes them stick. And then you can apply them to kind of where you're at.
I totally agree. What about you, Garrett? What are some of your things? Like, you mean, you've hunted different states and different places. Like what's your like,
drives you right now? Like, what do you want to do, or is it the same, or what's it kind of look like from your perspective?
It's kind of funny listening to Lee talk about how your guys' progression has gone. In some ways, mine has almost been going the opposite direction. And where a lot of my early years, I was doing a lot of traveling. I was, I've never hunted that type of habitat before. That'd be really cool. Spent 4 days or a week out there or whatever, and almost have kind of become a jack of all trades, master of none in certain ways. And so those experiences, I feel like I can draw on them now. But one thing I hadn't historically always done a whole lot of is just being hyper focused on, like, say, one specific area or one specific deer or one specific, class of animal or something like that, to where now I'm almost like, if I want to pursue something like that, I can't be traveling to 4 different states in the same year. I can't be buying all these different tags. I need to be able to spend, narrow that down a little bit to maybe I get 2 or 3 tags and I just focus on those. And at the same time, my wife has been slowly getting into hunting. So a lot of my time also has been kind of, bringing her along, hunting with her, film each other, show her the ropes, but at the same time, not be like, trying to push her too hard. Just kind of let her go at her own pace. And so that's been really fun too, just kind of seeing that. I don't have any kids yet, but I kind of feel like maybe that would be a similar, type of a thing, like getting your kid into archery. For me, it's, getting my wife into archery and bow hunting and seeing her start to progress. So both of those things have kind of been what has excited me, most recently.
That's a really good point. And like for me, I know I realize I don't love, I love going to new places and doing that, but I need a decent amount of time in those locations. Like even for me, like up to this point, Pennsylvania has been my main focus, but I would be jumping around to these different states and I felt like I could never overly commit to one thing. And I like fully embracing myself in it. Now when I do Western trips, and I've worked to the point where I've been able to have the vacation enough to take off, but I won't go for less than 10 or 14 days because I was like, I want to fully understand it and be there and learn the terrain, learn what they're feeding on, understand all of those different things about the animals. And that's what really drives me. And, as I'm able to get more opportunities and stuff, I I don't want to just shotgun myself too much and again, that's just where I'm at personally too, which kind of aligns a little bit with what you were saying there.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking the same thing. I've been building points. I've done the over-the-counter stuff in Colorado several times now, but it's like, what I'd like to do is once I have sufficient points, I can go on maybe a little bit more exclusive tag and take 2 weeks off. And just that year, I'm not as focused on whitetail. Like the Western thing for that year is, the focus. And just, try to, like you said, not scatter yourself so far with a shotgun approach on any given year.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. I like hearing everybody's kind of like thoughts and how they're looking at, their own personal goals and where they're at and where to kind of go next. And like, and for me too, I'm really trying to get better at I feel like I spend a ridiculous amount of time in the woods scouting and learning, but like there was things, and I've said this before, I'm still trying to get better at is like the different species of trees and plants and what they're feeding on and understanding that woodsmanship side of it. Like, that's why I'm constantly like questioning things now. If I see, and I've learned this a lot from Johnny specifically, is like noticing, deer nibbling on this or that. Okay, what is that? Why? Can that be reproduced if I go to this area and I find something that's like that? And really like getting down to those granular, portions of it.
Mm-hmm. Do you have the app? I think it's called Picture This.
Yeah. Didn't I tell you it? Wasn't that one?
I don't know, maybe.
Okay. He told me about it, I know, so you
really?
might have heard from him.
Yeah.
We can just take pictures of any plants or trees and it tells you what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what I use to learn for most of that. So there's not cheating, just using technology to help with that learning curve. I was just this weekend I'll be doing the mountain buck scouting camp, and I'm telling people about using that app and how to do it. It's like I do it all the time. I'll go through and be like, okay, I'm seeing this a lot, and there's a lot of deer sign around this specific thing. What is it? And even if I don't have service, I'll take pictures of it so I can take a look at it later and try to understand what that is. But yeah, it's a super valuable tool.
That is a huge learning curve going to new places. Yeah. Because the vegetation changes so much, even over just small distances.
Yeah.
And I feel like it took us a decade of hunting Atlanta to kind of really learn what deer key in on down there. And then you go to Kentucky, which is not that far, and things are totally different. We're up here, like, what is this? It's like redbud everywhere. Whatever all this underbrush is, like you don't.
Oh, the greenbrier and multiflora rose and stuff.
You just don't see that down where we are. So it's all of a sudden you're in a totally different environment. So many different variables that you have to figure out.
Yeah.
So that's.
That is funny because like, and it can even be like 10 miles down the road. Like the places in Pennsylvania I've hunted completely different looking environments, from terrain to the vegetation that's there to what they're feeding on. And it's always like this, trying to understand what that specific area, what the primary food sources and browse and all those different things. Cause it's, it's so different. And it's like, I remember hearing all the time, like, oh, deer don't like ferns, they don't eat them. And it's like Johnny and I, like, it's like where we're at, they freaking pound the ferns in the wintertime, the bulbs, and they're always digging them up. And it's just like that's where, maybe another area where there's better food sources that they don't even pay attention to them. But it's like knowing what that specific area is and being able to really understand it.
That's similar to Atlanta. There's ground ivy everywhere around Atlanta. In certain most of the areas that deer don't touch it, but then you go to a certain area and you like all the trees, the ground ivy is eaten off the tree at browse height. I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know if the soil is different and there's a different like sweetness in the leaf, or there's not other available forage for them. But for whatever reason, like, or maybe even like a family of does watched their mother eat the ivy, and so they got onto that, and like most other deer don't. I don't know. It's so specific to your area that it just takes time hunting and observing to really learn that, and going out of state and trying to figure that out in 2 days, like Andy was just saying, it's a tall task.
Yeah, definitely is.
So hunting Tennessee this year, I was cutting a shooting lane, and I cut this branch, and it was bush honeysuckle. I didn't know what it was at the time. It's apparently invasive to Tennessee. Cut this branch down, and I go, and I'm sitting there like a day or so later, and these deer come in and start pounding the leaves off of this branch that I've cut. And I was like, holy smokes, they're killing this stuff. I'd never seen it before. It's, new to us. And it's like I started looking for more of that in other places and other spots and stuff. Like I just was like, the light went off. It's like, oh, I paid attention to what they were eating. They're eating this stuff like crazy. Go find some other places that have that forage. And it was like every place they had that I could find that stuff, there was a pile of deer in these little areas. So I think a lot of guys, at least I know early on in my hunting career, like I wasn't paying it super close attention to those details. I was just kind of like, as a teenager, just kind of aimlessly, like just going hunting. I wasn't like analyzing what deer were doing, why they're doing it, what they're eating on, and like trying to figure that out. I was just, I think that's, probably the progression of a hunter is like, you just start to pay attention to small things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, guys, I think we've been rolling for like 2 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It's been a while now, and a lot of people came through. It's always good. I love doing these types of podcasts with all these different perspectives and ideas and everything here. So I appreciate everyone coming down and sitting here, and definitely had a good time. So any last words? What?
I said thanks for hosting.
Yeah, no problem. Any last words, Lee?
Not for you, no.
You always have something to say.
Yeah, you got something.
No, I got nothing to say to you about
Beau
nothing.
Martonik.
Nothing?
We'll settle in the hot tub later.
All right. With that, we're going to end this one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.